the face of insecurity in Nigeria, Tudun Biri in Kaduna State was hit by a military airstrike, which the Nigerian Air Force claims to be accidental. This airstrike, intended to eliminate terrorists, accidentally hit civilians during a religious celebration. Now, the death toll has risen to over 120. There are some details for you in this particular package, and also a reaction from the Coalition of Northern Elders. Take a listen.
The CND condemns the killing of innocent civilians in the Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. The CND strongly rejects the explanation put forth by the military that the Kaduna attack was accidental. The CND condemns the lack of coordination in the operation of the Nigerian Armed Forces. We call on President Tinubu to prioritize the establishment of a centralized command structure within the security forces. The structure should clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each arm, ensuring effective coordination and collaboration. We call on the government to invest in modern communication systems that enable real-time information sharing and enhance intra-agency cooperation. The CND calls for a comprehensive, transparent, independent investigation into the Kaduna incident to ensure that all those responsible are identified and brought to justice. The CND demands adequate compensation for the victims of the Kaduna killings, not only a means of providing financial support to the affected families, but also a gesture of acknowledgement and empathy.
The Nigerian military's mistaken bombing of a Muslim congregation in Tudun Biri, Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria, has raised serious concerns about operational strategies of the nation's security forces. The devastating toll of 120 lives lost has sparked widespread calls for a comprehensive review of the military's reconnaissance tactics and a pressing need for more advanced, precision-driven combat mechanisms. The President of Nigeria has ordered a full probe. Several other voices, including the Christian Association of Nigeria, leadership of the opposition People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has condoled with the victims. While the military has acknowledged the error and issued an apology, voices across the nation emphasize the urgency of enhancing strategies to prevent such catastrophic incidents in the future. Northern elders have also asked for compensation of families of victims of the bombing error. The intended target, bandits using villages and forests as cover, underscores the complexities faced by the country's military. This incident has amplified the necessity for a strategic overhaul, advocating for a meticulous and advanced approach in combat operations. The discussion surrounding this tragedy calls for a critical evaluation of Nigeria's military strategies to prevent civilian casualties and ensure precision in targeting threats.
And of course, it's also important to mention, as an update to this particular very tragic story, is that protesters actually did storm the National Assembly on Wednesday to express sadness over the accidental bombing of Tudun Biri in Igabi, local government area of Kaduna State, on Sunday night by the Nigerian Army. Now, it was gathered that the death toll from that particular incident has risen to about 127, as Amnesty International threatened to take legal action against the federal government if it failed to carry out thorough investigations into this particular killings, of which the Nigerian government, through the spokesperson of the president, Ajuri Ngalali, actually did release a statement saying that the government is grieved and pained by this very, very, of course, disastrous happening, and that thorough investigation will be carried out. Now, this came as the United Nations also enjoined the military to protect the lives of citizens across the country and reduce the incidence of accidental killings by the armed forces in Nigeria. An airstrike that was originally intended to flush out terrorists had on Sunday night accidentally hit civilians during a religious celebration at Tudun Biri. Of course, at this point, we will, of course, go for a breather. When we return, the show continues. Stay with us. This is still Secure the Continent, and of course, to shed more light on the very unfortunate incident that happened in Tudun Biri, Kaduna State, I have with me joining virtually retired Brigadier General Joseph Komolafe former Amotekun commander, Ekiti State. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, I mean, this is what we saw in Kaduna State is rather very unfortunate. Now, the governor, Sani Uba, actually said civilians were mistakenly killed and many others were wounded by a drone attack targeting terrorists and bandits. Now, from a tactical perspective, and also as a former, well, I call you as a former commander, you know, when it comes to theater affairs, what are the chances and circumstances that could actually warrant to such an unfortunate scenario like we witnessed in Tudun Biri?
Thank you. First of all, my heartfelt condolences to the families of those that lost their life during the operations, and also those that were that died. May the Almighty accept their soul and grant them eternal rest. Such type of such kind of mishap do happen in operations. The main thing I can attribute to, though I'm not privy to be in the theater of the operation, could have been an intelligence failure or inaccurate intelligence. That is the only way, but that's the only major thing I can attribute that unfortunate incident to. Maybe the people who gave the information, the man on the ground who gave the information, didn't have his details, or whatever must have happened along the line, or when the drone took off, things changed within from the time it took off and the time it got to the objective area. That could have also amounted to the mishap or the error in releasing the payload of the drone.
I mean, which is rather sad, but one would also believe that when, you know, some sort of mapping is done for areas like this, we know that most of the time it's usually guerrilla warfare, where you have bandits and militants, and some of these insurgents mingle around normal civilians. Could there have been a better way to have gone about it than maybe the kind of carpet bombing we saw or we witnessed, you know, at this village?
And that's why, first of all, I said maybe the information or the intelligence was not very accurate. And what the insurgents, if they have mingled with the civilians, in laws of war, they call it perfidy. They must have committed what we call perfidy. But you see, the other way would have been if the accurate information had come, maybe instead of taking them from the area or something, they would have taken them from ground. You see, when you are carrying out operations, there are three types of fire. We have the direct fire, which is, we have the direct fire, which has a very short range. Your small arms, weapons, you see me, I see you, I aim you, you aim me with fire. That is much more accurate than the type of the indirect fire. We also have our guided weapon firing. This can either be through beam, homing system, so on and so forth. You fire, you guide it, you home it to the objective and control it. The collateral damage here is minimal because it goes is precise equipment that you use. The last one is the indirect fire. The indirect fire covers, you don't see the target. You plot some graphs, send the payload, gets to the objective. It's an area weapon. It kills more than the normal, what they call it, the direct fire or the guided weapons. It does get down, it can be as big as about 2,000 pounds. That will come, the bomb or the rocket that will come to that area. So along the line, what was used was indirect fire, which the drone carries. And when you are firing indirectly, there are a lot of things that could actually cause inaccuracies. For example, the manufacturer details of the weapons, can cause it, the wind, gravitational pull, even when the kite, what I say kite, I mean the drone or aircraft is diving, it can also affect the accuracy of the bombs. So these are factors that we take into consideration when you are using indirect weapon of fire, which is basically bombs and other rockets, so on and so forth. So, but in this case, if we have had adequate intelligence and we now know that these people are here, and the people that the Mungi was supposed to have told us, and I want you to understand that one of the most difficult operations in the world is fighting in beat-up area. And because these criminals mingle with normal people, is an asymmetric warfare. It is not a defined warfare. Somebody sitting down to you, next to you, can even be the insurgent. So that's the problem.
Now, we also understand that in a statement released by the spokesperson to the president during Ganali on Tuesday, he said that the president was actually described the bombing as very worrying and painful. And of course, he directed thorough investigation into the incident and also calls for calm while authorities try to look into this very unfortunate scenario. Now, I mean, what do you anticipate as maybe a likely outcome of this investigation?
Thank you. In military operations, basically fighting, I mean, when you talk of counter-revolutionary warfare or crowd dispersal, all those minor operations, after each operation, a board of inquiry is set up to look into the pros and cons, what has happened, what must have gone wrong, what didn't go wrong, where you got it right, why you didn't get it right. And at the end of every operation like that, a report is written. And I know this will not be an exception, even without anybody calling for it. I know that the military will set up a board of inquiry to look into what must have happened and where possible, maybe it will have been maybe it will be avoided, or the collateral damage will have been avoided or not. The board will look into it, and that's why we always have what we call rules of engagement. So they will now look at it. Did those in the theater of operation follow the rules of engagement? If they didn't follow it, why did they follow it? So these are things that will come up later. The military, of course, surely, either anybody says it or not, we set up a board to look at what must have happened. Are these people committing perfidy, or they are just bloody civilians to carry out their normal daily routines? The board will unravel that one. And of course, the Armed Forces Armed Forces Act, the laws of the Federation, has punishment for any misdeed in the military.
All right, thank you so much, retired Brigadier General Joseph Komolafe, former Amotekun commander from Ekiti State. Once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, at this point, we will go on a quick break. When we return, joining us on the program to further dissect this is Colonel Hassan Stan Labo, security expert. Stay with us. This is still Secure the Continent on New Central Television. And of course, today we are discussing the very unfortunate incident that happened in Tudun Biri, Kaduna State, Nigeria, where of course the army actually did admit that it accidentally bombed a village. And to further dissect this rather unfortunate scenario incident is Colonel Hassan Stan Labo, security expert, joining me in the studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. I mean, let's set the ground, running. Now, we understand that the government has actually condemned this very unfortunate incident. We know the presidential spokesperson, Nigerian Ganali, on Tuesday said the president called the bombing mishap worrying and painful, and has directed a thorough and full-fledged investigation into the incident and also calls for calm. Now, my question to you is this. what could have been the likely scenarios that resulted in this rather unfortunate event? And what do you anticipate as an outcome of this thorough investigation?
Well, thank you so much. Steps so far taken by the federal government and, of course, the defense headquarters, I think, are in order. It will all go a long way in calming down frayed nerves. What could have gone wrong? Well, like it is, to start with, I would say maybe failure of intelligence, or not failure of intelligence, but intelligence, gone bad. Actually, they got words, or they received information who got crystallized into intelligence that these bad guys were all over the place and so on, especially within that Tudun Biri area. And of course, they did what they were expected to do. It's just that it ended up turning out to be what I'll call collateral damages. But all the damage you saw there, if actually that had gone, the incident had gone the way it was expected to go, what had happened to our brothers and sisters there is what would have happened to the terrorists. Like it may be, or like it is, it has happened, and all we need to do is some level of damage control as much as we can by ensuring that relations of the bereaved are, persuaded to understand the situation under which this happened. Collateral damages or accidental misfirings as this are things you should expect in operations. It happens everywhere. It's happening as we talk.
But if one is to look at the, what I call it, scale right now, or of this particular incident, this is not the first time in Nigeria that we are having such very unfortunate incident. Now, the attack is the latest, of course, in recent errant bombings of residents, particularly in Nigeria's troubled region. But between February 2014, there was also an incident of a Nigerian military aircraft that dropped a bomb at Daglun in Borno State, killing about 20 civilians. And also, in September 2022, there were at least 14 documented incidences of such bombings in residential areas. Now, what does all of this reflect of our security apparatus when it comes to tactical, offensive, let's even leave, okay, let's put it vis-a-vis intelligence.
Look, let me just say something. And I'm not saying it to cover up for the military or whatever. No, I'm saying it because that is the reality on ground. Okay? I've been exposed to international operations, about 4 going by my counting. And I must tell you, even some of the best, and I mean the best of nations in handling technology of this nature, you still find such mishaps happening and so on. Is it with the Americans or with the Brits or with the Germans or the French? These things happen. Even when you drive your car, there are accidents on the way. These things happen. All we need to say or do now is to say, look, we shall continue to enhance on our training, enhance on handling and delivery capabilities, and so on and so forth, to see that we're able to sharpen our know-how in these things. Definitely they happen. You expect to see them happening. It's only that we should try to see how we can cut down on the magnitude at which, or the rate at which they occur. We should try to reduce it as much as we can. But definitely, I can assure you, my brother, you would always see them in operational areas. Okay?
I mean, one, of course, you talked about collateral damage in theaters of war, which to a very large extent, yes, we know these things happen. Let's also talk about the level of training of the security personnel. I mean, what we saw in this particular village appeared some sort of like a carpet bombing. If maybe for want of words, I may just choose to borrow that particular phrase. Couldn't have there been, a better alternative, knowing fully well that this is a guerrilla warfare where you have insurgents mixed with civilians who may not, that's the civilians, may not even know that they have terrorists and, militants and insurgents, living around them. If the intelligence they had it that these people are, living with normal people, there could have been a better alternative to go about this. Don't you agree?
I would say yes and no. I would say yes and no. And you see, there are certain statements I would have loved to make here, but you see, tempers are still high. I can't make such statements, all right? Because I'll just be talking like a soldier. If the people that died were to be soldiers, you know what would be my comment here? Frankly, I would say, well, may the souls of those soldiers rest in peace. They have paid what's it called now?
Ultimate price?
Ultimate price in the national interest. Have you seen a situation where, but you see, these are not statements we make when we are talking about innocent civilians, not soldiers who have signed to die for their country. Not situations where you are leading men in battle and unfortunately 5 or 10 men had become stragglers and there's no way you can extricate them. And you say, let them pay the national price. Move on, gentlemen. That is the spirit of a commander. And what are we saying? We can forsake 4, 5 men. Let them pay the national price. Let's save this balance of 30 or 40 men and let's move on. Where a chopper is standing by to pick up men under fire, and at best you can only take 20, the remaining 10, there is no how you can take them, otherwise the entire chopper and even the men would all crush off. And you tell the pilot, take off. But we cannot say this in the case of civilians. These are innocent civilians who don't know what soldiering is, who have not signed to die, who will not be dying and be saying, I am proud, I'm dying for my country. So we can't say this now. We can't even be mentioning such things. The best we can do is to continue to see how we can, try to calm frayed nerves and so on.
Now, let's talk about generally Nigeria's fight against insurgents, particularly over the years. Some, of course, have, we know that in the past there were territories or parts of the country where we even had some of these extremists, plant flags, these insurgents plant flags and, claim territory and all of that. But it appears like their domain has started shrinking. However, some also believe that we still have a long way to go. That's the country and its fight against insurgents. What is your take?
One advice I will give any country that is yet to be baptized by terrorism is that never you allow it to start at all in the first place. Once you have allowed terrorism to plant a step in your territory, you are finished. You are finished. It's a war you will continue to battle with. It's a war you will continue to battle with. A friend of mine the other day was saying, oh, thank God, Israel is helping to reduce the number of global terrorism. We all just laughed at it, but I knew where he was headed to. Okay? The point is that terrorism globally today has become something which every sane country sincerely would wish it never happened to it. And that is why those who are responsible for the mess we find ourselves in today, by now, they are also taking the hit, and by now, they are also regretting they ever did what they did. Nigeria is God's own country, and we shall come out of this. I can assure every Nigerian. All we have always lacked is the right leadership to enable us to come out of this, and we shall get out of it, definitely. I know how determined the military leadership, especially now, is to see that we clean up this mess. And if we continue in this spirit, we shall clean it up. This incident that just happened is highly regrettable. It has only come to want to dent our image. But I will urge the leadership of the Nigerian military not to allow themselves or their morale to be lowered in any way. See it as a boost to move on and forge on.
I mean, I just want to, of course, come in here. You said that if you had your way, talking about countries that have not witnessed any form of terrorism, you would advise that they don't allow it stick from the onset. Yeah. But if you look at it also, many of these terrorist so-called groups started more like civil, or what I call it, liberation movements, you know, claiming to be fighting for a cause, initially were non-lethal, right? But the question now remains is some of them now morph into whatever it is they do right now. We've seen cases even in Nigeria. So at what point does a government, you know, will I say, put the comment or stop such activity of a movement that is becoming or morphing into, quote and unquote, a terrorist group or an insurgent?
Besides external intrusion, I can tell you that even bad governance within a country could bring about things like this. But bad governance emanating from bad leadership that is insensitive to the yearnings of the people. The people have become disgruntled. Government has refused to listen to them. Such level of disgruntlement degenerates to a point where such people begin to pick up arms. It further degenerates to a point where they begin to get themselves organized. It further degenerates into a point where they begin to seek external training, and so on and so forth. From seeking external training, they begin to seek external assistance until they fall into the hands of the devil himself. And who is the devil himself? The terrorists out there, disguising either as some mercenary or whatever. And before you know what, you have foreign elements in your country who are pulling down your country, and so on. Even those who brought them in, just like it is in our own case, must have lost complete control over them, and so on. Those who brought these guys, you know, invited them in, have lost control over them. All efforts to persuade them with money and so on did not make any way. We had confessions. Here we are, suffering over this. And those people are walking the streets just because they are big shots in this country. This is a country where if you're a big man, you can do anything and get away with it. And that is what has brought Nigeria to where she is today. That is it. The very same people in power, the very same people prevailing over our affairs, stealing all our common patrimony, are the same people who put us into all this rubbish. And they are still walking the streets because it's a country that is lawless. So that is the way you find terrorism brewing up in a country, internally and with external assistance and so on.
I mean, I'm still going to stay on this.
Yes, please.
We've seen the cases where some of these terrorists are branded repentant, right? And then the question of justice also comes to bear, because some would also ask that this repentant terrorist in the past has also put some people, you know, in very precarious situation. They've killed families, they've killed husbands, wives, children. A lot of people are mourning, are in very, very dire state because of their activity. Right now, you are saying, no, they came, they surrendered. Right now, they are repentant. And so the issue of justice comes, you know, into bear. So my question to you is this. Do you think in terms of justice in this fight against the insurgents, is Nigeria really exhaustive? Are we really doing it the way it's meant to be? Is justice truly served?
We haven't. We haven't, because in the last 8 years, our sense of judgment has been blurred by all sorts of sentiments, be they religious, tribal, ethnic, or what have you. All these elements have so far distorted our war against terrorism in this country, especially in the last 8 years. The period which I say Nigeria had into leadership. All right? Yeah. I only hope now we are ready to fight terrorism. and we are setting aside all those sentiments and face terrorism squarely. When you fight terrorism, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm a field commander and a subordinate brings terrorists before me and brands them PWs, that's prisoners of war, I will tie you to the stakes, try you, and fire you. Where were you when he dropped his weapons and hands up, and then you are able to arrest him? You met him in the battlefield, armed. Get him down. Don't come and tell me you are bringing prisoners of war to me. And then tomorrow we are talking of amnesty for them. You are bringing PWs. Do you know what it is to take care of PWs? You have to house them, clothe them, medical care, feeding, and so on. Where is the resources? From which purse? The meager resources voted to the army is what I want to use on these guys when my troops have not eaten? You are bringing additional problems in the name of prisoners of war? But look, we must take this battle serious.
Okay, but you know,
like we speak right now.
Okay.
Like we speak right now, I learned to have thousands of these PWs out there waiting. They call them repentant, what have you. Repenting from what? But our duty as soldiers, excuse me.
Okay.
Our duty as soldiers is to hasten their journey to God. Let them go to God where they will seek penance and repentance. We don't have repentance to offer or penance to offer. All I need to do is to assist you to get to heaven or hell on time and receive your judgment wherever it is. That's my duty as a soldier. Okay. Not to start gathering people unnecessarily and creating more problems to my country.
Okay, but there have also been scenarios where some of these people said that it was never their intention to join these groups, that they were coerced into joining some of these insurgent groups and all of that. Some even said that they were coerced as children and they had to just stay there, you know, for the sake of their families, their loved ones, and they just couldn't take it anymore. Hence, they are now repentant.
Go tell that to your God. Go tell that to your God.
So how about issues of war crime? So, I mean, the reason why I'm asking this is that this latest bombing, for instance, among citizens, underscoring continued allegations of human rights abuses, particularly in Nigeria, in the country. And we've seen international organizations like Amnesty International, the United Nations say, you know what, some of the activities carried out by the Nigerian military, you know, borders around, quote and unquote, or branded as war crimes, you know. So at what, is there a line, you know, to this when it comes to theaters of war?
My brother, when it suits you as a nation, you talk about war crimes. When it does not suit you, you talk about your national interests. The United States, in its teachings on law of war, books which we read as cadets and as junior officers, would always tell you never negotiate, of course, with terrorists. You don't negotiate with this, you don't do that, and so on. But I can assure you that the United States will negotiate to ensure that its citizens are set free. All right? Look, your national interest comes first. Don't be carried away by some of these things you read in books. Britain opted out of what's it called? Help me out.
The EU?
Yes, out of the EU. On what grounds? Mainly because of its currency, the pound. It was never in its national interest to see the pound suffer any form of devaluation whatsoever. Okay? Look, when the chips are down, you make sure your national interest is protected as a country. That should be first and foremost. Hold on to your national interest. Your country must exist before any international law is able to be applied to it. If it's not in existence, who are you applying international laws to? We can't just be stupid, sit here and think we are here to be the good boys of the United Nations. No. We've got our national interests.
So you're saying we take the fight to them?
Take the fight to them and clear these guys off. They must either get out of our territory at their own volition, or we'll kick their ass off our territory.
All right. I mean, we're pressed for time. But before I let you go, moving forward, how better should Nigeria or the Nigerian government handle situations like this? Preferably even avoid, such unfortunate fallout like we saw in Kaduna State.
First and foremost, we shall continue to enhance on training. Okay? We shall continue to enhance on better liaison between communities and security agencies. All right? We shall continue to see that political leaders don't continue to forge unnecessary romance with terrorists like we have seen of late, especially in the last administration, where both at the national and subnational levels, we had governors and even at the presidency, individuals who were romancing with terrorists, even within the ministers in the last administration. I spoke so much about that.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Colonel Hassan Stan Labo, a retired security expert. Thank you once again, sir.
I appreciate it, please.
All right, and also a very big thank you to retired Brigadier General Joseph Komolafe, former Amotekun commander from Ekiti State, who joined in earlier, on the program. Well, this is where we drop the curtains on today's episode of the show. Now, remember that security is actually the prerogative of everyone. They would always say in Nigeria, if you see something, say something. My name is Dapo Adegboye. Bye for now.